In a secure command room outside Washington, a digital globe quietly tracks aircraft, ships, and satellites in real time. Across the Atlantic, Europe's airspace and sea lanes are monitored by a network of allied radar systems stretching from Norway to Turkey. On paper, these systems belong to the same alliance. But in reality, they represent two very different kinds of power. In 2026, the United States spends roughly $880 billion a year on defense. NATO as a whole spends slightly more, about $1.3 trillion. But that total is spread across more than 30 countries, each with its own priorities, industries, and political limits. The U.S. operates around 11 aircraft carriers and carrier strike groups. NATO members combined field many capable navies and air forces, but no single command structure matches America's ability to act instantly, anywhere on Earth. So this raises a serious question. When people say USA versus NATO, what are they really comparing? Is it raw spending, technology, personnel, or the difference between a single centralized military and a coalition that must reach consensus before it moves? This is not a story about winners or losers. It's a reality check about scale, coordination, and what military power actually means in today's world. Military power begins with money, not just how much is spent, but how reliably it can be sustained. In 2026, the United States defense budget sits near $880 billion, representing roughly 3.2% of U.S. GDP. That single budget supports one unified military system. Procurement, logistics, research, global basing, and personnel are all funded through the same pipeline. NATO's combined defense spending is larger on paper, approximately $1.3 trillion. But this figure hides a critical reality. That money comes from over 30 separate national budgets, each approved by different parliaments, operating under different economic pressures. Only about two-thirds of NATO members currently meet the alliance's 2% GDP defense target. The United States alone accounts for close to two-thirds of NATO's total military spending. Economic scale also matters. The U.S. economy remains near $27 trillion, giving Washington unmatched borrowing capacity and industrial depth during prolonged crises. NATO includes wealthy states like Germany, France, and the UK, but also smaller economies whose defense funding fluctuates with domestic politics. So while NATO collectively spends more, the U.S. controls a far larger share of immediately deployable resources, centralized, standardized, and continuously funded. It's the difference between one checkbook and 30 money builds capability, but people operate it. In 2026, the United States maintains roughly 1.3 million active-duty personnel, supported by about 800,000 reservists and National Guard members. These forces are organized under a single command structure, trained to common standards, and designed for rapid global deployment. NATO's combined active military personnel total around 3.4 million, with another 2 million in reserve across member states. On paper, this gives NATO a clear numerical advantage. But those numbers are spread across dozens of national armies, each with its own doctrine, language, equipment standards, and readiness levels. Only a fraction of NATO forces are held at high readiness. The alliance's rapid response elements, including the NATO Response Force, involve roughly 300,000 troops, but most national units still require days or weeks to mobilize. The U.S., by contrast, keeps multiple brigades, air wings, and naval groups on continuous rotational alert, with forward bases in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. American logistics commands can move heavy armor across oceans within days, a capability few NATO members possess independently. So while NATO fields more soldiers overall, the United States retains something different, a permanently mobilized force. Structured for immediate action rather than gradual assembly. Modern warfare is decided in the air long before anything happens on the ground. In 2026, the United States operates roughly 13,000 military aircraft, including about 2,000 fighter and attack jets. This includes over 450 F-35 stealth fighters, alongside F-22s, F-15s, F-16s, strategic bombers like the B-2 and B-21, and a vast fleet of aerial refueling tankers and early warning aircraft. NATO members combined field approximately 8,000 aircraft, with around 1,500 combat-capable fighters. Countries like the UK, France, Italy, and Germany operate modern platforms, including Eurofighters, Rafales, and their own F-35 fleets. But interoperability remains uneven. Different maintenance systems, weapons stocks, and pilot training standards complicate large-scale coordination. Where the U.S. holds a decisive edge is in enablers. Airborne radar, electronic warfare planes, space-based targeting, and refueling capacity. The U.S. Air Force alone operates more than 400 aerial tankers, allowing American jets to stay airborne far longer and strike much deeper. Technology also favors centralization. The U.S. controls its satellite networks and command systems directly. NATO relies heavily on American space assets for reconnaissance and precision targeting. In short, NATO has capable air forces. But the United States owns the sky's infrastructure. Control of the seas is what turns regional strength into global reach. In 2026, the United States Navy operates 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, supported by more than 90 destroyers and cruisers, 50 attack submarines, and a global network of naval bases. Each carrier strike group functions as a moving airbase, capable of projecting power thousands of kilometers from American shores. NATO navies combined field hundreds of vessels, including capable fleets from the UK, France, Italy, Spain, and Turkey. France and the UK each operate one aircraft carrier, while other members rely on smaller amphibious ships or helicopter carriers. In total, NATO members possess around 20 submarines with advanced strike capabilities and dozens of modern frigates. But geography matters. The United States is buffered by 2 oceans, allowing it to choose when and where to engage. NATO, by contrast, must defend long, complex coastlines from the Arctic to the Mediterranean, while managing narrow maritime choke points like the Baltic Sea and Turkish Straits. Most importantly, NATO's naval forces remain nationally controlled. Coordinated operations require political approval across capitals. The U.S. Navy answers to one command. So while NATO protects its region effectively, only America maintains continuous naval presence in every major ocean at once. Missile power is where deterrence becomes measurable. The United States maintains one of the world's most advanced missile arsenals, built around a triad of land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched missiles, and long-range strategic bombers. In 2026, America fields roughly 400 Minuteman III ICBMs, each capable of striking targets across continents. At sea, U.S. ballistic missile submarines carry over 1,000 nuclear warheads combined, forming the most survivable leg of deterrence. Beyond nuclear systems, the U.S. deploys thousands of conventional precision missiles, including Tomahawks, JASSMs, and hypersonic prototypes, launched from ships, aircraft, and ground platforms. The Pentagon spends over $30 billion annually on missile development and missile defense alone. NATO, as an alliance, does not possess its own missile force. Instead, capabilities are spread among member states. France and the UK maintain independent nuclear arsenals, totaling roughly 500 warheads combined. Several NATO countries operate cruise missiles and air-launched strike weapons, but stockpiles are far smaller, and command authority remains national. Missile defense also depends heavily on American systems, Aegis ships, Patriot batteries, and space-based tracking. So while NATO contributes important regional capabilities, the strategic missile backbone of the alliance remains overwhelmingly American. The future of conflict is increasingly shaped by unmanned systems and indirect pressure rather than traditional firepower. In 2026, the United States operates an estimated 11,000 military drones, ranging from long-endurance surveillance platforms like the MQ-9 Reaper to smaller tactical systems used by ground units. American drones are tightly integrated with satellites, cyber networks, and precision strike systems, allowing real-time targeting across continents. The U.S. also leads in autonomous development, spending more than $10 billion annually on AI-assisted reconnaissance, swarm technologies, and next-generation unmanned aircraft. NATO members collectively field thousands more drones, but capabilities vary widely. Turkey, the UK, France, Poland, and Germany operate advanced UAV programs, while many smaller NATO states rely on limited commercial-grade platforms adapted for military use. There is no unified NATO drone command. Each country manages its own fleets and data pipelines. Asymmetric warfare goes beyond drones. It includes logistics disruption, information pressure, and economic leverage. Here again, coordination matters. The U.S. maintains centralized doctrine for hybrid operations, while NATO approaches these challenges through committees and joint frameworks. NATO brings regional resilience. The United States brings integration at scale. That difference defines how fast asymmetric tools can be deployed. In modern conflict, the first battles often happen in silence, inside networks, satellites, and electromagnetic space. The United States operates one of the world's largest cyber forces, with more than 6,000 personnel assigned directly to U.S. Cyber Command, and many thousands more embedded across intelligence agencies and military branches. Annual spending on cyber operations and electronic warfare exceeds $15 billion, supporting offensive cyber units, satellite protection, signal interception, and digital battlefield management. American systems are centralized. Cyber Command can coordinate attacks, defenses, and intelligence collection through a single operational chain, tightly linked with space assets and conventional forces. NATO approaches cyber differently. The alliance recognizes cyberspace as an operational domain, but execution remains national. Countries like the UK, France, Germany, and Estonia maintain strong cyber units, yet there is no unified NATO cyber army. Information sharing relies on voluntary cooperation, legal alignment, and political approval. Electronic warfare follows the same pattern. The U.S. fields specialized aircraft, ship-based jammers, and space-enabled sensing platforms. NATO contributes important regional capabilities, but many depend on American early warning systems. So while NATO strengthens collective defense, the digital nervous system of the alliance still runs primarily through Washington. This is where the comparison becomes less about equipment and more about geography. The United States maintains over 700 military installations across more than 80 countries, with permanent forces stationed in Europe, East Asia, the Middle East, and the Pacific. Its logistics network includes pre-positioned equipment, fuel reserves, and transport fleets that allow American units to deploy globally within days. NATO's strength is regional depth. The alliance controls territory stretching from North America to Eastern Europe, with airfields, ports, and land corridors that provide layered defense across the Atlantic world. In Europe alone, NATO operates hundreds of bases and forward operating sites. But NATO moves by consensus. Every major operation requires political agreement among member states, a process that can slow response time during fast-moving crises. The United States does not face that constraint. Washington can act independently, then invite allies afterward. Strategically, NATO offers collective legitimacy and geographic resilience. The U.S. provides speed, coordination, and global mobility. In practice, most NATO missions still depend on American intelligence, refueling aircraft, satellite guidance, and command infrastructure. So NATO expands America's reach, but America remains the engine. So who is more powerful in 2026, the United States or NATO? The honest answer is that this comparison is misleading by design. NATO exists because of the United States. Nearly two-thirds of NATO's military spending, most of its strategic airlift, satellite surveillance, missile defense, and nuclear deterrence all come from Washington. Without American command systems, logistics, and space infrastructure, NATO would remain a strong regional coalition, but not a globally deployable force. At the same time, the United States without NATO would lose something equally important: geographic depth, political legitimacy, and forward positioning across Europe. NATO provides territory, resilience, and collective defense. The U.S. provides speed, integration, and worldwide reach. America fields the carriers, bombers, satellites, cyber networks, and missile forces. NATO supplies regional mass, allied air forces, and strategic frontage. This isn't USA versus NATO. It's USA plus NATO operating at two different levels of power. One is centralized and global. The other is collective and regional. Together, they form the most extensive military partnership in history. If this breakdown helped, tell us in the comments what stood out and what we could do better next time. And if you want more calm analysis like this, consider subscribing.